We're back. So, J.P. Morgan made this $2 billion mistake in the wake of this massive financial regulation bill, Dodd-Frank, also called FinReg for financial regulations. It was supposed to stop all this excessive risk-taking. And the whole idea of, when you have a profitable enterprise, you have to take risks. That's how you make your profit, by taking risks. And so the idea that the government would say, start an investigation, it's almost as ridiculous as the government investigating people in baseball for using steroids. And the other thing is $2 billion is a drop in the bucket when you compare it to the total size of the economy and when you compare it to the trillion-dollar deficits that the feds are running. So it's kind of funny that they're investigating a private bank for making that one. That's really a rounding error in the federal budget. And the J.P. Morgan president said, it's probably not going to affect our dividend, but it was a big mistake and we screwed up, and we'll try to figure out what we did so we don't do it again. So moving on to feminism. So I want to make sure the students who were watching the podcast or watching at home get that the test deadline for the second midterm is Thursday, 7 o'clock. Send me a Moodle message if you require an extension. So feminism. A little bit of background. In case you didn't notice, men and women are different. So what are some of the differences? Well, one of the differences is testosterone. Men are more aggressive, more violent. The majority of violent acts and criminal acts are committed by men. Does this mean that no women beat their husbands? No, it does not. As a matter of fact, a dear friend of mine, remember he told me this story, he'd moved to a strange country. He met this beautiful Norwegian girl named Ina, and boy, she was just a looker. I mean, just tall, Nordic, just beautiful. And so the two of them sort of started shacking up together, and she went back to Norway. He went with her. And so they're living in this studio apartment, and as they're there, things kind of turned sour, and she started beating him up. And he was taught, from when he was so high that, you never hit a woman. And so he just tried to defend himself, and he says, Jeff, you don't know what it feels like to have the woman you love with both of her ears in her hands, pounding your head, the back of your head against a hardwood floor over and over again. And she's straddling this guy. She's got, probably some people pay $200 an hour for this. I don't know. But she's straddled the top, and she's got his ears, and he had kind of big ears too. So banging his head over and over again on the hardwood floor. So there are abusive women that abuse their husbands, and sometimes men don't fight back for sociological reasons. And so there's a case where you might say that culture trumps gender because a man might be physically stronger. There's some women who are physically stronger than men too that can beat the hell out of guys. You look at some of these female bodybuilders, and particularly when you're younger. I don't know if you have this experience. There was this girl in I guess it's third grade or something like that, and she was literally a foot taller than me, and I wasn't short, and she she was a bully. I think she stole my bike lock or something. I don't know. I had to go back over to her house to get it back, but she could beat the hell out of me. So when I was so hot, So all those things now you probably have your sociology professors and sometimes even your psychology professors will feed you this line of BS that all gender differences are sociological. Your anthropology instructor might feed you this line of BS that all the differences between men and women are all cultural or anthropological. Your political science professor might feed you this line of BS that it's all sort of political, that it's the reason that men and women behave differently has to do with these systems of oppression or something like that. But probably deep down inside, even after all these attempts to try to convince you that there are no innate differences between men and women, you probably think, there's something not right. That just doesn't sound right. I know this person's got a degree and they're They sound kind of convincing. They're showing me these sort of weird cases of like African tribes off someplace where the men are the house husbands and the women go off and hunt, and they're showing me how the female lioness is sort of like wears the pants in the lion kingdom and so on, but I'm not really convinced. So there's something to that. So testosterone in human beings, it's what makes men more aggressive. It's what makes men more violent. And so this is why if you look, men are 9 times more likely to have been in prison. That's both federal and state prison. They commit serious offenses. It's really tiny. Sorry about the small size there. I was sort of adding a couple of statistics here, and the rest of the presentation should be larger. So men are 9 times more likely to have been in prison, and they're 10 times more likely to have committed a murder. So you look at crime statistics. Men are also more likely to have been the victim of a crime, and you can see that sort of makes sense. When you have a bar fight and there's an assault, it's probably one man assaulting another man, and so men tend to be the victims of crimes as well as the perpetrators of crimes. The one exception there is, can you guess what the crime is where the majority of victims tend to be women? Sexual assault. There you go. And if you look at the number of sexual assaults committed by women, particularly those against men, they're just very few and far between. You get some of that like in prison, and it's a matter of restricted access, I guess. So you do get that, and so I'm not saying that no woman ever commits sexual assault. And it sort of affects the way you see all these cases lately about teachers. These female teachers, some of them sort of hot looking, and they're having sex with their minor students. And how old are these students? They're 15, 16 sometimes. I don't know about you, but I look at that and thinking, I wish that I would have been a victim of that crime. That would have been great. It's like, where was this teacher? I had Mrs. Kelleher, who was like a year from retirement, had been at the school for like 45 years. But then you see that story. If the role is reversed, if the gender is reversed, and you say, okay, well, if you have like a male teacher, it doesn't matter if the male teacher is like super handsome, he looks like Brad Pitt or whatever. You think, oh, there's something wrong there if he's having sex with a 15-year-old girl. You think that he's abusing his position. So it shows that there are these psychological and sociological differences, but they come from somewhere. They don't just spring from a vacuum. They come from these innate biological differences. And this goes back to the reproductive strategy. I'll talk about this a little bit later. Biologically, a man can impregnate as many females as he can have sex. So he can have sex with this and his reproductive strategy, speaking from a biological point of view, is a shotgun approach, right? Cast a wide net, or whatever the metaphor you want to use, shotgun. So you're just sending out your seed to as many places as possible, and then the woman's reproductive strategy is to, since she's going to have to invest 9 months into carrying the child and years into weaning the child, and she's going to be defenseless, so she wants to be very, what's her strategy?
Looking for a provider.
Yeah, she's the provider, but
someone to protect her.
If you can impregnate, like, let me put it this way, if you can impregnate a bunch of different women, are you going to be that choosy? No. It's like I used to want. Now, I suppose you're going to want, maybe somewhat, but from a biological standpoint, if it's a shotgun approach, it's just like you're going to have sex with as many females.
No, I'm saying women are looking for a provider and a protector. That's
right,
they're
right.
Sure,
so they're looking for a man who's going to protect them and provide for them, and also they're probably instinctually looking for a man who's going to create a strong child. So I mean, I think there's something about and the reason you're attracted to a man who's strong and sort of, you know, has the qualities of provider is because you want a man who's going to be able to protect you, and that also happens to be those qualities which going to make your child more likely to survive and perpetuate your genes to the next generation, which is, you know, what natural selection and biology is all about. So because of these differences, women are the ones who say no usually when it comes to sex. And because of the ones who say no, men are the majority who commit sexual assault. Because men are the ones that say yes all the time. Because yes. You look, who would you expect are the most promiscuous group of people if you look at human society? It's been on the news lately.
Who would you expect?
Young people, but there's a particular, actually a fairly small segment of the population who are getting more than probably anybody in this room. Gays, yeah, the male homosexuals, and not women, but the male homosexuals. Why? Again, you get, if there's two guys, there's nobody to say no. And so, so and again, there's like this. What's the other joke that you know, women need a reason to have sex. Men just need a place. And so if you're a guy and you're walking down the street and there's like some hot babe and like well, I put this. Suppose you're a woman walking down the street and there's some guy and he looks like he's right out of GQ magazine. He's like really, you know, square, chiseled jaw, beautiful mane of hair flowing, and then he's driving this hot red convertible, you know, and just like looks like he's loaded with money, handsome, charming. Is hey babe, come back to my luxury penthouse apartment and we'll do the wild thing, you know. and what's she probably going to say? You creep, get away from me, right? And she's gonna, like, you know, think that she's gonna be offended. She's gonna feel like this guy's a sleaze bucket, and he's like, hey, I'm a Hollywood producer, you know, and even though this guy's really attractive, you know, and he's got lots of money, and even a person who's poor might say, you know, they're gonna feel insulted. You take a guy and he's like walking down the street, and there's sort of an average ugly woman pulls up like in a Pinto and says, "Hey, you know, want to come back to my little crappy studio apartment on the bad side of town and do the wild thing?" He's wondering what the catch is, right? He thinks that he's, you know, if he thinks that it's just like some scam to like that if you, as soon as he walks through the door, you know, her partner's going to club him over the head and take his money or something like that. And so, and again, this shows this different attitude. Does this mean that there aren't some men who are chaste and pure and or maybe, you know, not as interested in sex and very selective about partners? Well, no. Does it mean there aren't some women who are extremely promiscuous and would say, hell yeah, I'll go with you, you know, or would feel like this was their lucky day? No, it doesn't mean that either. So what it means, though, is these are tendencies you have in each gender. Comments so far? Disputations? Anyone want to disagree or play devil's advocate here?
Totally agree.
So, brain function. Men and women's brains function differently. And you can see this like in a brain scan. Let's see. And this translates to psychological differences. So, men tend to identify with their work and career. Again, this goes back to our hunter-gatherer past. So, original division of labor. Men are the hunters. They go after game animals, and they're also the protectors. They protect you against enemy tribes. And then women go out and they have children. They raise children. They educate children, and they go out looking for roots and berries and things. They supplement the meat because hunting is tough work, and when you're using crude stone tools, or a big rock, or maybe a flint spear. Later on, got fancy with bows and arrows, or maybe you're digging like a primitive pit trap. it's tough to get animals, particularly when these animals have big tusks or claws and fangs. And so, have you ever seen like a wild bear or even a cougar or something like that? It's, you're taking your life in your hands. Even if there's like a bunch of you and one of him, it's a tough job. And when you're talking about hunting a woolly mammoth or something really big, it's dangerous stuff. So men, tend to identify with work, with career. Women tend to identify with relationships, and that sort of makes sense when you think about women taking care of children, hanging out at the cave, going out digging for roots and berries. And do you have to be quiet? Do you have to worry about scaring away the predator? No, there's no. You're not hunting any animal, and so you can just gab all day long, right? And actually, it's good for you to gab all day long because you're teaching your children how to communicate. And so verbal skills become very important for women. And again, this is in our formative development. And so if you're a man, though, you're out in the hunt, you can't be gabbing to your friend. I don't know if any of you, I've never been hunting, but I hear this from the hunters, that if you're out there in the forest and you have this hunting partner who always is a gab, 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 you scare away the animals. And so, and also when you're fighting against an enemy tribe, you don't want to give away your position. So verbal skills not as important, and so you do hand signals and things. And also spatial ability, be able to judge distance for throwing that spear or shooting an arrow, the spatial abilities, and working in a hierarchy also. You need a hierarchy to go look for roots and berries or to help raise your kids? Not really. But when you're talking about fighting a war, that's where you need a strict, some sort of strict order. People need to work. You can't do a war by consensus. You can't sit around and one guy says, "Okay, I got a plan. Here's my plan. You go off to the left, and Ugg will go to the right, and I'll go up the center, and so on." And then Ugg says, "No, I don't. I always have to go up the center. I think you should go up the center. I'm going to sneak around the back." And then a third person says, "When do I get my chance to go down the center at the frontal assault? I'm always sneaking around, and I don't like the always. I feel like a coward hitting them from the rear. I want to charge up the middle, and by the time you do that, you've given away your position, and you're going to get slaughtered. So hierarchy, following the chain of command, respect for authority, and not so much on the verbal skills, and a lot on like the physical skills and spatial ability and so on. Men tend to make decisions through authority structures, and they've done all these sociological studies. So you take a group of men, you put it together, and what do they typically do? They typically elect a leader, or somebody volunteers to be the leader, but a person is recognized as a person who's sort of running the show. Women tend to talk a lot, and they tend not to elect a leader or a group leader, and they do everything by consensus. Men are typically going to either elect a leader and follow him, or they'll have a vote, or they'll have a leader and then they'll have a vote, but the leader will still sort of be running the show. Men again tend to be more aggressive, confrontational, and women tend to be more relational or social. And this goes back to our hunter-gatherer past. And again, these are tendencies, so I don't want you to think that I'm giving you a stereotype that men are strong and silent, and that women are gabbing all the time and gossiping and are social and not aggressive. Because there are certainly some women who are very aggressive and there's certainly men who are very verbal and gabby. I might be one of those. But the stereotypes come from someplace, right? So here we have the male brain. Look, job stuff is a really big one. Power tools lobe. Guy talk, very, very small. Exploring in action, big section there. Computer operation. Ogling Center. Pub and wine bar homing system. And notice the personal hygiene synapse. It's not even a section of the brain, it's just a single synapse for personal hygiene. Sex, very large article. And actually, if you look at male brains, that part of the medulla oblongata that deals with primitive functions, including sex and aggression and the fight or flight syndrome, it's a lot bigger in men. That's one of the reasons why men tend to be more sexual than women and more interested in sex. Women, they have more serotonin receptors. Serotonin is something that it's something which controls moods. And so that's why women tend to have more mood fluctuations. Men tend to be more flat. Again, overall, the average, if you compare the genders, men tend to be more flat. Women tend to be more sort of up and down. And so we have the bizarre mood area, the shopping lobe, TV sitcom and soap perception, hairstyling, clothes coordination, the logical argument neuron, gossip, just one neuron, gossip lobe, chocolate neurotransmitters, material urges, wedding and flowers, and the emotional black fantasy and emotional blackmail system.
It's highly technical, right? It's a highly technical diagram.
Yeah. Seriously, the male, female brain, you can see sex, and we have things like dangerous pursuits, beer, TV remote control addiction center, lame excuses gland, and the crotch scratching area.
Oh, and beer.
Oops. And the female brain, we have the need for commitment hemisphere in the middle, telephone skills, again, communication, indecision nucleus. Again, thinking about how do women make a decision? Well, they talk it to death, men would say. You gotta just, find a formal structure, decide what the rules are, and then follow them to the letter and get things done. And it's just like shopping is a good example, right? The men, if they go shopping, it's like, what do I need? I need some new shirts. So you go in and you find the shirt, you go straight to the shirt rack. You don't make a detour anyplace. You go to the shirt rack, you find the cheapest one, you throw it in the cart, and you head straight to the checkout line. Women tend to want to go around and browse and looking at the color and the style, and so you do get these differences as well. Does this mean there are no men who are fussy dressers, or that there's some women that just see clothes as functional and are looking for that one pair of sensitive shoes? No. But again, this is the generalities.